There's a particular kind of silence that exists in deep wilderness. Not the peaceful silence of a quiet room, not the comfortable silence between old friends. This is something else entirely. It's a loaded silence, the kind where every snapped twig sounds like a gunshot, where the absence of birdsong feels less like tranquility and more like a warning, where the forest seems to be holding its breath, waiting. In October of 2019, 3 friends set out on a 4-day backpacking trip along a stretch of trail in the Cascade Range of Washington State. Their names, for the purposes of this account, are Daniel, Marcus, and Claire. They were experienced hikers. They had maps, they had gear, they had years of outdoor trips between them, and they had each other. Only Claire came back. She returned to the trailhead on day 6, 2 days late, dehydrated, her clothes torn in ways that suggested prolonged contact with brush and rock. Her pack was missing. One of her boots was missing. She had scratched the skin of her left forearm raw down to the dermis in several places, not from an external wound, but from the inside out, as if she'd done it herself, compulsively, over many hours. She didn't speak for the first 14 hours after she was found. When she finally did speak, what she said was this: "They walked toward it. I told them not to. They walked toward it anyway." This is that story. The trail they chose was called the Heron Creek Loop, 22 miles of backcountry terrain rated moderate to difficult, with a reputation among serious hikers as one of the more rewarding routes in the Pacific Northwest. A loop trail. You start and end at the same parking lot, threading through old-growth forest, across 3 creek crossings, past a glacial lake so blue it looked computer-generated in photographs. Daniel had done the southern portion twice before. Marcus had never done it, but had logged hundreds of miles on similar terrain across Idaho, Oregon, and Montana. Claire was perhaps the most technically proficient of the 3. She had summited peaks, taken wilderness first aid courses, and had a background in orienteering that meant she was rarely uncertain about where she was on a map. They signed into the trail register at 7:14 a.m. on October 11th. 3 names, 1 destination, 4 days estimated duration. The weather forecast showed clear skies for days 1 and 2, with a possible system moving in by day 3. Manageable, they agreed, nothing they hadn't handled before. The first 7 miles were everything a trail like that promises. The old-growth firs were cathedral tall, their canopy creating that peculiar amber-filtered light that feels almost sacred. The trail was well marked, their pace was strong. They crossed the first creek, ankle-deep and fast-moving, on a log bridge, one at a time, laughing at nothing in particular. Marcus set up his camera to photograph the falls. Claire cataloged plant species in a small notebook she kept for exactly this purpose. Daniel, the most social of the 3, maintained a running commentary of observations, jokes, and complaints about his pack weight that kept the mood light. By early afternoon, they had reached their first campsite, a designated spot near a bend in Heron Creek, flat and sheltered, with a fire ring already established from previous use, the kind of campsite that felt like it had been placed there deliberately, like a reward. Nothing was wrong, everything was fine. That's the thing about places like that. They don't show you what they are right away. They give you something beautiful first. They made dinner as the light faded, freeze-dried pasta, the kind that somehow tastes incredible when you've earned it. They ran through the next day's route on the topo map. 14 miles total for the loop's back half, they figured. 2.5 days to complete it. Easy. The lake would be around mile 15. They'd make camp there. Perfect. Marcus turned in early. Claire stayed up to write. Daniel sat by the dying fire for a while, listening to the creek. He told Claire before going to his tent that the creek sounded different at night. She asked what he meant. He said he wasn't sure, just different, like it was farther away than it actually was. She wrote that down in her notebook. She didn't know why, just that it seemed important. They broke camp at 7:30 the following morning. The sky was still clear, the temperature had dropped into the low 40s overnight, and everything smelled of pine resin and cold water. Claire noted in her account that she felt unusually alert that morning. Not anxious, just hyper-aware. She attributed it to good sleep and mountain air. The trail climbed steadily through the morning, gaining about 1,800 feet in elevation over 6 miles. This was the hardest section of the loop, the part that filtered out casual hikers. There were stretches where the path narrowed to a single boot width, where the roots of old firs had buckled the ground into a series of ankle-twisting ridges, where the forest pressed in close and dark. It was around mile 11 that Marcus noticed something. He was in the rear of the group, paced slightly behind the other two. He'd tweaked his knee on a descent, and he called ahead to stop them. There was a side trail, or what appeared to be a side trail, an opening in the trees about 50 yards off the main path, marked by what appeared to be a cairn, a stack of stones the way hikers mark routes. 3 flat stones, balanced cleanly, placed at the entrance to the opening. None of them had noticed it on the way up. None of them recalled seeing it on any map. Cairns on established trails are common. Cairns in the middle of dense backcountry off-trail are not. "Someone's been through here," Marcus said. "People go off-trail. It doesn't mean anything," Claire said. "How recent?" No one answered that. They stood at the mouth of the opening for probably 2 minutes, long enough that Claire later could recall details about it, the way the light didn't quite penetrate the canopy past the first 50 feet, the way the ground in the opening looked darker than the forest floor around it, damper, as though a seep ran below it. There was no sound from within, no birds, no wind movement. "We're not going in there," Claire said. No one argued. They kept moving. But Marcus kept looking back at it. Claire noticed. She didn't say anything. That night, camped at a rocky flat near the base of a ridge, Marcus was quiet in a way the others hadn't seen before. He ate half his dinner and sat staring at the dark beyond the camp perimeter for long stretches. When Daniel asked if he was okay, Marcus said he was tired. Knee was bothering him. But before they turned in, Marcus said something that Claire has never been able to say away. He said, "I think I've seen that opening before." Daniel asked where. Marcus just held his head. "I don't know, maybe in a dream, maybe." The weather system arrived 8 hours ahead of schedule. By 4 a.m. on day 3, the temperature had plummeted and a hard, wet rain was coming down in sheets. They broke camp in the dark, packing wet, moving without the easy comfort of the previous mornings. The trail had turned slick and treacherous. At one point, Claire slipped on a wet root and went down hard on her right knee, bruised, not broken, but painful enough to slow her. They were behind schedule, not dramatically, but enough that they made the decision, unanimously, to push harder toward the lake campsite rather than stop for lunch. The lake was their planned waypoint. The emergency shelter listed on their map, a 3-sided lean-to maintained by the Forest Service, was within quarter mile of it. If the weather worsened, they'd shelter there. That decision to push faster meant they were less attentive to the trail markings, and somewhere around mile 16, they took a wrong turn. This is not as unusual as it sounds in bad weather and poor visibility. Trail markers become invisible in heavy rain. Topo features that look distinct on paper look identical on the ground. All 3 of them had navigated before, but navigation under stress, in deteriorating conditions, after 3 days of accumulated fatigue, it erodes judgment in ways that are difficult to predict. They argued for 7 minutes. Claire's account is precise on that point. 7 minutes, standing in the rain, 3 people who trusted each other's judgment, suddenly unable to agree on something as fundamental as which direction was south. They compromised. They split the difference between the 2 bearings and set off on a heading 6 degrees off the compass reading. It was the wrong choice. They walked for 2 hours on that compromised bearing. The rain eased to a steady drizzle. Visibility improved, and then, through the trees at the bottom of a shallow slope, Claire saw something that stopped her cold. A cairn. 3 flat stones, precisely balanced. The same cairn. She recognized the stones. There was a distinctive orange lichen bloom on the largest one. She had photographed it the day before, almost absent-mindedly because the color was striking. They had walked in a circle. Not a geographic impossibility. In dense forest without reliable navigation, it happens. The human body's natural drift causes circular walking. But the mathematics of it troubled her. They had walked a bearing, not a wander. They should not have been able to close a loop that tight without significant slope or obstacle to redirect them. The terrain hadn't done that. They had simply ended up back here. "It's not possible," she said, and she meant it technically. The numbers didn't work. Daniel didn't say anything. Marcus was staring at the opening, that same dark opening in the trees, the canopy pressing down just past the threshold, the ground inside it darker than the ground around it. "Marcus," Claire said. He took a step toward it. "Marcus," her voice was sharper. He stopped, turned back. His expression, she would later describe, was not frightened. It was something closer to relief, like someone who has been searching for something for a long time and has finally found it. "It wants us to come in," he said. The silence that followed that statement lasted a long time. If you've made it this far, you're already in too deep. This is the part where most people close the tab. Don't. Because what happens next is the part the search and rescue reports couldn't explain. And trust me, you need to hear it. Hit like if you're still with me, and stay until the end. The truth of what Claire found in that forest will not let you sleep tonight. They made camp 30 feet from the cairn. Not because they chose to, because the light was failing. Daniel's knee was now badly swollen from the terrain, mirroring Marcus's injury, oddly, on the same knee, though Daniel hadn't fallen. And they were exhausted in the specific way that comes not just from physical exertion, but from sustained, unresolved fear. The kind of tired that doesn't come from your muscles, the kind that comes from your mind refusing to stop processing something it can't resolve. "We're not camping here," Claire said. "We don't have a choice," Daniel said. "I can't walk on this, not in the dark." She looked at the opening, then at her two friends, then at the ground. "Fine," she said, "but we keep the fire going all night." The wood was wet. It took 40 minutes to get a decent blaze, burning through most of their fire starter supply. But it caught, and it held, and in the orange circle of its light, the three of them sat in the particular silence that had settled over the group since the cairn. It was Marcus who started talking first. He began describing what he called a feeling, not an emotion exactly. He was specific about that distinction. Not fear, not excitement, more like a pull. The way he described it, like standing at the edge of very deep water and feeling the undertow below the surface. A current that wasn't violent, but was absolute. That if you let it, it would take you. Not against your will, but rather by dissolving your will. By making the concept of resistance seem beside the point. He'd felt it, he said, since the first day, since before the first day, since before the trip. Daniel was quiet through this. He was staring at his swollen knee, pressing on it with two fingers in a way that seemed absent-minded. Claire asked Marcus when he'd first felt it. He said, "When I agreed to come on this trip, the moment I said yes." She asked him what he thought it was. He was a long time answering. "I think it's a place. Not a building or a thing, just a place. And I think some places want to be found, and they arrange for it. They put out, I don't know, not bait, more like gravity. Like their existence creates a pull on certain people, and the pull is what makes you say yes, makes you choose this trail, makes you drift north when you meant to go south." The fire popped. Somewhere in the dark beyond the camp, something moved in the underbrush. Not loudly, just enough to mark its presence. "We need to sleep," Claire said. She took the first watch. 3-hour shifts, fire maintenance, stay awake. Daniel took the second. Marcus was supposed to take the third. When Claire awoke for her turn at 4 a.m., the fire was down to coals. Daniel was asleep in his chair, head dropped forward. He had fallen asleep on watch, something he had never done in years of camping. Marcus's tent was empty. His sleeping bag was inside it, laid out as though he'd been in it and simply risen. His boots were still there. He had walked into the dark in his socks. Claire woke Daniel. She was calm about it, deliberately, forcibly calm, in the way only people who have been trained in emergency response can be. She assessed the situation. Marcus had been gone no more than 3 hours. It was dark and cold, but not lethally cold. He was on foot without boots, which limited how far he could have gone. The most likely direction was the opening. "We wait for light. 20 minutes. Daniel didn't argue. He was staring at the empty tent with an expression she couldn't read. At first light, they followed. The ground just inside the opening was soft and held prints clearly, barefoot impressions, medium-sized, walking at a normal pace, not running, not stumbling, walking with what the print pattern suggested was deliberate, even purposeful stride. like someone who knew exactly where they were going. The prints led deeper into the opening, into the canopy dark interior, and Claire followed them nearly 400 yards before they simply stopped. Not at a creek, not at a rock face, not at any obstacle. They stopped in the middle of a clear patch of forest floor, no different from what surrounded it in any direction. And they didn't end the way prints end when someone sits down or changes direction. They didn't smear or deepen the way prints end when someone leaps. They simply became shallower with each successive print, as if Marcus had been progressively losing weight, and then they were gone. Claire stood in that clearing for a long time. Daniel came up behind her and looked at the last prints. "I want to keep going," he said. His voice was flat, without affect, the way voices sound when they're saying something the speaker has not consciously decided to say. She grabbed his arm, hard. He blinked, looked at her. Something returned to his face. "We're going back," she said. "We're going back to the trail. We're going back to the trailhead. We're calling search and rescue. That is what we are doing." He nodded, slowly at first, then more naturally, like an engine turning over. "Okay. Yeah. Okay." They turned around and walked back and found the camp without difficulty and found the main trail without difficulty. 45 minutes of walking, clear bearing, no deviation. As if the forest was simply done with them. As if it had gotten what it wanted and was releasing the remainder. They reached the trailhead at approximately 3 p.m. Daniel used the emergency beacon. When the ranger's truck pulled in, Claire was sitting on the ground with her back against the trailhead kiosk, and she was scraping her left arm with her thumbnail, slowly, rhythmically, and she didn't stop when the ranger approached her. It took her a few seconds to recognize that he was there. "Are you injured?" he asked. She looked at her arm as if seeing it for the first time. "No," she said. "I don't know why I'm doing that." She stopped. Search and Rescue conducted a 6-day operation. 14 personnel, 2 K9 units, a drone survey of the area, and a coordinated grid search of the terrain around the Heron Creek Loop and the unlabeled section northeast of the main route. They found no trace of Marcus. No gear, no clothing, no indicators of injury or struggle, no remains. The K9 units tracked a scent from the campsite into the forest, followed it to the clearing Claire described, and then stopped. Both dogs stopped at the same point and refused to continue in any direction. Search and rescue personnel described the dog's behavior as reluctance, not the behavior of dogs who have lost a scent, but the behavior of dogs who have found something they don't want to approach. Both handlers noted it separately in their incident reports. It was one of the few elements of the case that multiple independent witnesses documented without prompting. There was a second detail that emerged in the SAR debrief that was not included in the official case summary, but which one of the personnel shared in a wilderness rescue forum in 2021. The poster, who used Handle but whose credentials were verified by the site's moderators, wrote the following. On day 4 of the search, one of our team members found what appeared to be a cairn approximately 2 miles north of the camp. 3 flat stones. She photographed it and noted the location. When we went back to document it for the case file the following morning, the cairn was gone. The 3 stones were there, but they were scattered, not knocked over, scattered, like someone had carefully placed each stone several feet from the others. The post received little engagement. Most responders assumed the wind had displaced the stones. The original poster replied once, simply, there was no wind that night. Daniel returned home to Portland. He went back to work within 2 weeks. For the first 3 months, by his own account, he felt nothing unusual. He attributed this to shock, to the psychological mechanisms the mind employs to make ordinary life possible after extraordinary trauma. He went through the motions. He went to work. He saw friends. He talked to a therapist who specialized in wilderness trauma, a field that exists primarily for survivors of avalanches, falls, near drowning, though not, she admitted, for situations quite like his. In January of 2020, 3 months after the trip, he called Claire at 1:30 in the morning. She picked up. He said, "I think I need to go back." She asked him what he meant. He said, "The trail. I need to go back to the trail. I've been feeling it, that pull that Marcus talked about. I didn't feel it then, but I feel it now, like it followed me home, like it's been building since we left." She told him not to go. He said he knew that. He said knowing that didn't make the pull any weaker. He said he'd been waking up at 3 a.m. regularly and lying in bed, oriented northeast, feeling the way you feel when you're homesick for a place you've never been. And that the longer he waited, the stronger it got, and he was calling her because he wanted someone to know, in case. "In case of what?" she asked. He didn't answer. Claire drove to Portland the following day. She stayed for a week. She has not spoken in detail about what that week entailed, but she has said in general terms that by the end of it, Daniel was better. That whatever the pull had been, it had eased. She doesn't know what she did to ease it. She says she thinks it had something to do with not being alone. That the pull, whatever it was, whatever its mechanism or origin, seemed to require isolation to function. That the presence of someone who was genuinely, concretely present counteracted it. She has no theory for why that should be. Daniel has not returned to the trail. As of the last information available, he lives in Seattle, has given up backcountry hiking entirely, and describes himself as not okay, but stable. He has never publicly discussed the events. He did not return phone calls from the one journalist who attempted to report the story, a freelancer who wrote a short piece for an outdoor recreation magazine in 2021 that was ultimately spiked by the editor for being too light on sourcing. Marcus has never been found. Claire agreed to have her account documented under the condition that no recording be made, only notes, and that she be allowed to review the final version before it was shared. What follows is drawn from those notes, reconstructed as faithfully as possible from her own words. She said, "The thing I keep coming back to is the prints. Not where they ended. I've made my peace with not understanding that. But the depth pattern. Each print lighter than the last, as if he was losing weight with each step. You'd expect a stride pattern like that if someone was getting lighter, like they were ascending, even on flat ground, like gravity had less and less grip on them. I'm a trained observer. I don't say things like that lightly. I know how it sounds. But the physics of those prints only make sense if Marcus was getting lighter as he walked. And the only way that's possible is if something was taking him, gradually, not all at once, the way you don't notice a slow leak until the pressure is already gone." She was quiet for a while after she said that. Then, "The part I've never told anyone, not the investigators, not my therapist, is that I felt it too, in that clearing, standing over the last prints. I felt it, the pull, the current. It wasn't frightening the way I'd expected. It felt like relief, the way Marcus described it. Like all the work of being a person, of maintaining yourself, making decisions, staying oriented. All of that could just stop, like you could put it down. I didn't go. I don't fully know why I didn't go. I wasn't stronger than Marcus or Daniel. I don't believe that. I think, and I've spent 2 years thinking about this, I think the difference was that I was angry, not at the place or at whatever the place is, just angry in general in that moment. Angry at Marcus for leaving, angry at Daniel for wanting to follow, angry at myself for leading us there. And anger, I think anger is incompatible with the dissolution it offers. Anger is too specific, too attached to outcomes. You can't let go of yourself when you're furious about what's happening to yourself. I think anger saved my life. That specific, present tense anger at the exact circumstances I was in." She paused, then said, "The part I've never told anyone, not the investigators, not my therapist, is that I still feel it. Not every day, but sometimes. Usually when I'm very tired, or very alone, or very worn down by ordinary life.
It's quieter now, but it hasn't gone away. She looked out the window when she said that last part. She did not look frightened. She looked like someone who has accepted a true thing about the world and is learning to live with it. The Heron Creek Loop is still open to hikers. The Forest Service has no record of any anomalous navigation events on that trail. No record of the cairn. No record of the off-trail section. The unlabeled northeast quadrant, it appears in Claire's GPS data she preserved and later shared with investigators, does not correspond to any mapped hazard or feature. Marcus was officially declared a missing person in December of 2019. His case remains open. His family has posted reward information on several missing persons databases. There have been no credible leads. There have been, however, a handful of reports from hikers on the Heron Creek Loop and adjacent trails over the past several years, collected informally through wilderness forums and hiking communities that contain recurring details. A cairn, 3 flat stones, appearing in places not consistent with trail marking conventions. GPS and compass discrepancy in the northeast quadrant. A feeling of being observed from within the tree line with no visible source. Difficulty navigating away from a particular section of trail. And, in one case, a solo hiker in the summer of 2022 who logged his experience in a detailed forum post, the specific phrase that Marcus had used. A pull. Like something that had been waiting and was glad to finally be found. There is a theory in wilderness survival psychology about what's sometimes called negative magnetism, the documented tendency of lost hikers to move toward terrain that worsens their situation rather than improves it, to descend into drainages rather than climb to ridges with better visibility, to move toward dense forest rather than open ground, to drift in directions that progressively complicate their rescue. The conventional explanation is fatigue and cognitive load. When the brain is overwhelmed, it defaults to decisions that feel like relief rather than decisions that produce safety. The comfort of downward movement, the psychological shelter of enclosure. It's a reasonable explanation. It's almost certainly incomplete, because the cognitive load explanation doesn't account for the specificity of the drift, why certain people in certain places orient in the same direction toward the same features, why the pull in case after case after case across mountainous terrain around the world is so consistent in its direction and its quality, why it feels, to those who've experienced it, less like confusion and more like recognition, as if the forest knows your name, as if it has known it for a very long time, as if it has been calling quietly at a frequency just below hearing since before you were born, and this particular trail, on this particular day, in this particular weather, with your particular level of fatigue and longing and accumulated weariness with the weight of ordinary life, was simply the moment you became quiet enough to hear it. Marcus heard it. Claire heard it and answered it with rage. You are hearing it right now. Whether you go towards it, that part is still yours to decide. Stay on the trail. Watch the cairns. Don't walk towards the silence. If this story reached you, and I mean really reached you, leave a comment with the word trail if you felt it, that pull, even just reading it, because I've heard from enough of you by now to know I'm not the only one. Share this with someone who loves the wilderness and thinks they know it. They don't. None of us do. Subscribe if you want more stories that live in the space between what can be explained and what can only be survived. I'll be here, waiting, but not in the way the forest waits. Sleep well. Keep the fire going.